Canada often appears familiar to New Zealanders before arrival. Both countries are associated with calm societies, polite social norms, vast natural landscapes, and reputations for balance between work and life. From a distance, Canada seems like a larger, colder version of something already understood. Yet that surface familiarity is precisely what makes the differences more striking. What surprises New Zealanders is not dramatic culture shock, but the slow realization that the rhythm, emotional climate, and unspoken rules of daily life operate on a different frequency. Early impressions are shaped by scale. Canadian cities stretch wider, roads feel longer, and distances between places subtly reshape daily expectations. Where New Zealand life often feels intimate and spatially close, Canada presents an environment that feels structured, segmented, and expansive. Urban centres appear orderly and efficient, yet slightly restrained. Public spaces are calm, but not conversational. There is a quiet formality in how people occupy shared environments, one that contrasts with New Zealand's more relaxed, socially porous atmosphere. Social interactions initially feel polite and smooth. Conversations are courteous, transactional, and respectful. Yet over time, New Zealanders often notice an emotional reserve beneath the friendliness. In New Zealand, casual warmth and understated humour often flow naturally into interactions with strangers. In Canada, politeness serves as a boundary as much as a bridge. Kindness is present, but it is carefully managed. Personal space, emotional privacy, and clear social lines are quietly maintained. Work culture introduces another layer of contrast. Canada values stability, planning, and institutional structure. Processes are followed closely, and professional roles are clearly defined. For New Zealanders accustomed to flatter hierarchies and informal collaboration, this can feel simultaneously reassuring and constraining. The Canadian approach emphasizes reliability and consistency, sometimes at the expense of flexibility. Initiative is encouraged, but usually within established frameworks. The pace of life also reveals subtle differences. Canadian routines tend to be more scheduled and segmented. Days are organized around predictable patterns, seasons, and obligations. In New Zealand, time often feels more elastic, shaped by weather, social opportunities, and personal preference. In Canada, time feels heavier, more accounted for. Winter amplifies this sensation, narrowing movement and social spontaneity, while reinforcing routines that prioritize preparation and endurance. Even nature, while visually overwhelming, is experienced differently. Canada's landscapes are vast and dramatic, but often observed rather than casually entered. In New Zealand, nature feels interwoven with everyday life, accessible and familiar. In Canada, wilderness carries a sense of scale and distance that commands respect and planning. The environment feels powerful, sometimes imposing, shaping behavior rather than blending into it. These early surprises do not arrive as moments of discomfort, but as quiet adjustments. They emerge in how conversations end sooner than expected, how plans are made further in advance, how social circles take longer to form. For New Zealanders, Canada feels less like an extension of home and more like a parallel version of calmness built on different assumptions about space, time, and emotional boundaries. As daily life settles into routine, these differences become more pronounced through repetition rather than contrast. New Zealanders often begin to notice how social belonging in Canada is slower to develop and more formally defined. Friendships tend to grow through structured settings, workplaces, long-term neighborhoods, scheduled gatherings rather than spontaneous overlap. Invitations are sincere but planned well in advance, and social availability is often shaped by calendars rather than impulse. What feels efficient and respectful to Canadians can feel emotionally distant to those accustomed to New Zealand's more fluid social rhythms. Communication styles further highlight this distinction. Canadians are careful with language, often choosing neutrality and reassurance over directness. Conflict is softened, disagreement is buffered, and emotional expression is moderated. In New Zealand culture, understatement also exists, but it is often paired with casual honesty and dry humor that dissolves tension. In Canada, emotional smoothness sometimes replaces emotional transparency. This creates an atmosphere where interactions remain pleasant, yet deeper connection requires patience and time. The concept of community functions differently as well. In New Zealand, community often feels informal and situational, emerging through shared experiences, local familiarity, and repeated chance encounters. In Canada, community is more often institutional, organized through associations, programs, and defined social spaces. Belonging is available, but it is accessed through participation rather than proximity. This structure offers security, but it also introduces a sense of emotional formality that can feel unfamiliar. Seasonality plays a quiet but powerful role in shaping behavior. Canadian life adjusts dramatically around winter, not just practically but psychologically. Movement becomes intentional, social life becomes contained, and resilience becomes a shared but unspoken value. New Zealanders, used to milder seasonal shifts, often find that Canadian weather reshapes social energy itself. Winter encourages inward focus, routine, and personal endurance, reinforcing the structured nature of daily life. Warmth becomes something planned rather than assumed. Over time, these patterns influence how New Zealanders perceive their own habits. Spontaneity begins to feel disruptive rather than natural. Casual drop-ins are replaced by messages and confirmations. Emotional openness becomes more selective. None of these changes are imposed directly. They emerge through subtle social cues and collective behavior. Canada does not resist warmth, but it regulates it carefully. Public politeness, so visible at first, gradually reveals its deeper function. It maintains harmony in a society built on diversity, scale, and coexistence. For New Zealanders, whose social cohesion often relies on shared cultural shorthand, this can feel impersonal at first. Yet it also demonstrates a different form of social care, one rooted in predictability, respect for boundaries, and mutual non-intrusion. These observations accumulate quietly. Canada does not confront New Zealanders with overt cultural barriers, but with gentle redirection. Life feels calmer, yet more compartmentalized. Safe, yet slightly distant. Familiar, yet emotionally structured in ways that take time to understand. The surprise lies not in what is missing, but in how differently similar values are expressed. With time, Canada's influence becomes less about comparison and more about adaptation. The structured calm that once felt distant begins to shape expectations. Social patience increases. Emotional pacing slows. Belonging becomes something built gradually rather than assumed. What initially feels reserved reveals itself as a system designed to hold together a large, diverse population without friction. The restraint is not absence of warmth, but a method of preserving it over time. Many newcomers begin to notice a quiet internal shift. Emotional responses become more measured. Plans are considered more carefully. Daily life takes on a sense of predictability that feels grounding rather than restrictive. Canada encourages stability not through pressure, but through example. The culture rewards consistency, reliability, and respect for shared space. Over time, this subtly reshapes how individuals move through both social and personal worlds. There is also a growing appreciation for the emotional safety embedded in Canadian life. Disagreements rarely escalate. Public spaces remain calm. Social interactions prioritize comfort over intensity. For those accustomed to more casual immediacy, this can initially feel muted. Yet with distance, it becomes clear that this emotional moderation creates a low-friction environment where trust builds slowly but securely. The longer Canada is experienced, the more its balance becomes visible. Individual freedom exists alongside collective consideration. Privacy is respected without isolation. Community is present without intrusion. These qualities reveal themselves not in dramatic moments, but in the absence of tension. Life feels buffered, insulated from extremes, shaped by quiet agreements about coexistence. Canada does not ask newcomers to abandon their instincts. Instead, it gently reorganizes them. Spontaneity becomes intentional. Warmth becomes selective but sincere. Connection becomes something earned through time rather than circumstance. The transformation is subtle enough to go unnoticed at first, yet profound enough to linger long after the novelty fades. In the end, the surprise lies in how a culture so outwardly calm can leave such a deep internal impression. Canada demonstrates that familiarity does not guarantee sameness, and that similar values can take very different shapes. It is a place where life feels steady, measured, and quietly transformative, revealing that sometimes the most powerful cultural shifts arrive not through contrast, but through consistency.